What's good with the YouTube with Convicts Perspective? It's your boy Big Flocko. Smashing. Dashing. Sliding on through. With a little bit of energy, man. What's cracking, people, man? Look, I got Rahul smiling and laughing already. So, okay, so this is what we got going on today, man. Blood Brothers. How the killing started out there in San Jose. We've previously done videos a little bit about Rodney Shelton, about Lucky, Spanquillo, Huevo, and we've gave concise accounts because their case records are pretty long, man, on that case, man. It's about 100 pages long. You can find it online. It's State of California versus Eddie Vargas. It has the whole case that was used against Silencio, Huevo, and Spanquillo, and all others involved. So we found a concise article that pretty much touches base on all things that were going on out there in San Jose from around 1989 to about 1992. This is where the killing started. Rojo's going to go from there. And as always, we're going to give a convict's perspective.
Right on, man. This is from the SF Gate, man. I read this and I was just like, oh, this is a good one, man. So it's called Blood Brothers. The killing started when the Nuestra Familia gang leaders felt their influence in San Jose was waning, prosecutors say. But the dead were all their own. I like that title, bro. That's Anyway, when the bullet-torn bodies started turning up on the streets and playing fields of San Jose, it was quickly obvious that a gang war had broken out. But this was a rivalry with a twist. This was not a war between competing gangs, police have realized. Instead, prosecutors said the 10 victims were executed by their own underworld friends and family in a misguided campaign to revitalize the Nuestra Familia prison gang in San Jose. On a practical level, the 3-year murder spree that began in 1990 has resulted in the costliest series of trials in Santa Clara County history. County officials said they have spent over $10 million so far, and the expenses will continue to mount. But the trials have also provided an intimate, through-the-looking-glass view into a shadow American subculture. According to mountains of court files and the gang members themselves, the much vaunted family at the heart of Nuestra Familia is a profoundly dysfunctional one, a soap opera type of duplicity, adultery, drugs, and betrayal. Behind the rhetoric and racial pride lurks the constant threat of sudden death, and not from the stranger's hand. All of this high noon playing around just littered the streets with bodies, said Deputy District Attorney Catherine Kitty Constantinian. We'll call her Kitty. Deputy District Attorney Kitty. They killed their own. It was an idiotic way of doing crime. Nuestra Familia, our family in Spanish, has been a burr in the tail of law enforcement since 1968, when, as a myth has it, the organization sprang into life in the exercise yard at San Quentin State Prison. All Nuestra Familia recruits are told of the day when Latino inmate shoes were stolen by a member of the Mexican Mafia, a rival prison gang whose roots twine deep into the barrios of East Los Angeles. As the thief brazenly walked the yard in stolen shoes, the victim and his Northern California friends rose up and fought. What happened then is unclear. No one knows the fate of the disputed shoes, but the rivalry between the North and South reportedly began that day.
No.
And a paradoxical blend of racial pride and hatred of other Mexican Americans has sustained both factions ever since. In the 1980s, as the NF grew, it set up a farm team called the Northern Structure, otherwise known as Nuestra Raza. Both the Familia and the Structure claim the color red, the number 14, the symbol of the Northern Star. Members swear fealty to the gang and vow to uphold the 14 bonds. I'm having trouble talking, which mandate secrecy, obedience, and respect within the gang. But given the amount of double dealing on the part of almost everyone involved, it's a mystery why the Familianos trust each other at all. The San Jose spate of killings was allegedly set in motion on April 19th of 1990, when Louis Dump Truck Chavez was paroled from Pelican Bay State Prison, carrying a hit list allegedly drawn up behind bars by the Mesa, the Nuestra Familia's ruling council. But the first thing Chavez did with the list with the hit list was to quietly slip it to his parole officer, prosecutors say. They claim the bloodletting didn't begin for several months, not until Bobby Silent Lopez and Ronald Lucky Shelton were paroled and meshed their murderous energies in an attempt to assert control. Shelton was the commander of the NF San Jose Regiment, and Lopez his newly minted second in command, prosecutors say. The main Nuestra Familia trial now underway involves 4 defendants accused of 7 murders, conspiracy, and assorted violent attacks. Defendant Bobby Lopez, James Huevo Trujecki, and Herminio Spanky Serna all face the death penalty. Co-defendant Eddie Pajaro Vargas faces life in prison. There appears to be little love lost between the 4 defendants. According to court records, Lopez once ordered a green light or hit on Vargas. Trujecki was once kidnapped and roughed up by fellow gang members who suspected him of not attending to gang business. The defendants are accused of killing Tony Little Weasel Herrera, Larry Valles, Esteban Guzman, alleged drug dealers who reportedly balked at paying taxes to the gang, Eli Rosa said to have disrespected other gang members, Marcos Baca, thought to be a snitch whose body was found on the grounds of Santee Elementary School, and Ray Chocolate Perez, a gang wannabe who may have made the mistake of breaking gang rules. The 7th victim to die, Sheila Apodaca, was allegedly killed on the orders of her boyfriend, Bobby Lopez, because she furiously objected to his womanizing and threatened to retaliate. According to prosecutors, the order to kill Apodaca was placed by phone from the 4th floor of the county jail, where Lopez was being held on other charges. Public interest has fallen off in the years since the murder, and the life and death courtroom drama now plays itself out for the Superior Court Judge Kevin Murphy. The jury. What?
Murphy, Judge Murphy, he sent me to prison.
The jury in nearly an empty house. In addition to the defendants whose ankles were shackled to bolts in the courtroom floor, the cast includes 7 defense lawyers, 2 apiece for the death penalty defendants and 1 for Vargas. Kitty, the district attorney, and her husband, and co-counsel Deputy District Attorney Charles, same last name, we'll call him Kitty as well, and 4 or 5 armed or watchful bailiffs. The kiddies, we'll call them the kiddies. Despite the fact that they are facing, at the least, a life behind bars, the defendants seem to bask in the perverse prestige of their dangerous gangster roles. Everything about this trial had to be done specially, from the remodeled courtroom with a special glassed-in platform for 2 of the defendants, to the police snipers on the courthouse roof.
True story. I'm gonna interject, Rojo, before. True story. I was in the county jail when these guys were going to court. They would shut down all movements. They would come by and they would ask all inmates to turn around that were in the holding tanks and to face the other wall as they brought these guys down. Swear to God, they weren't playing.
Hey, that's
The high power.
hey, and in the gangster world, that's a sign of respect. That's saying, man, these guys are with that action.
Oh yeah.
Wow, nice. All right. To made-to-order cells in the county jail's security housing unit. Serna resembles nothing so much as a wide-eyed college student, and Trujecki could be a portly businessman. Except for the metal anklet above his black loafers. Vargas, with his facial tattoos and street-tough expression, for a while wore his jail jumpsuit to trial, but now he's softened his approach with preppy turtleneck shirts and slacks. With his good looks and slender physique, Lopez hardly looked like the lethal Romeo who prosecutors say ordered his lover shot, gunned down 2 men, and after being mistakenly released from San Quentin, was arrested after a high-speed chase that forced another car off the free Fresno overpass. He looks keenly at everyone who enters or leaves the courtroom, though spectators are warned not to look back because communication with the accused is strictly forbidden. Early in the trial, one female reporter was hustled out of the room and threatened with arrest when a bailiff mistakenly accused her of smiling and nodding at a defendant. The nickname Silent is a kind of joke, prosecutors say, because Lopez is famous for talking a lot. He can't help himself, says one of the kiddies. Were it not for Lopez and his big mouth, law enforcement would have had a much harder time solving this case. The families of the victims are noticeably absent from the courtroom. Some of the victims had no close family or had destroyed their family ties through drug use and criminal activity. Some, like Sheila Apodaca's family, lived too far away to follow the case and assumed it had been resolved years ago. Is that trial going on still? We thought maybe Lopez was getting out of prison by now, said one relative who asked not to be named. A pretty girl with lustrous brown hair, Sheila Apodaca had lived all her life in the tiny Central Valley town of San Lorenzo.
No, hey, I'm
Tiny
gonna say
Valley
something.
town.
I don't know if I don't know if they're related, but everybody knows that Apodaca is a big family in Dakota.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah.
So
I
I'm
know.
wondering, I'm wondering if this Apodaca is related.
You never know. I know a couple of them out of the East Bay in general.
Me too.
All right. Tiny Central Valley town of San Lorenzo. San Lorenzo's in the Bay, but okay. Before she hooked up with Bobby Lopez and moved to San Jose, Lopez had arrived in San Lorenzo as a teenager and quickly made a reputation as the heartless tough guy. Sheila's family disapproved of the match and were relieved when she called home to say she was coming back. The next thing her family knew, she was dead, shot execution style in the back of the head on a San Jose street. She was only 21 years old when she died. It was a blow to the whole community, said her relative who wished not to be named. When they had the funeral, it was terrible. In a small town like this, you remain close, in touch, even when you haven't seen each other in years. Another of the big, bitter legacies of Sheila Apodaca's murder is that her son, who is 9 years old, is growing up an orphan. His father died several years ago in the same small town as one of Bobby Lopez's sons. Lopez has two sons, born 1 month apart by different women. It's so sad to see those two kids here at the youth center and to wonder what they must think, said the relative. I'm sure they know everything. The indictments against the Nuestra Familia, released in 1992, charged 21 defendants with plotting and committing 6 murders. 13 of the defendants initially faced the death penalty. Wow. That's a lot, bro. That's a lot. The first arrests were followed by even more killings, as hits were allegedly ordered by gangsters in jail, and the members who remained on the streets battled for position and power. Today, nearly 7 years after the corpse of the first victim was found, 2 defendants have been convicted of murder in separate trials, and a third was convicted of trying to kill a fellow inmate while in custody in the Santa Clara County Jail. In addition to the trial in Murphy's courtroom, which began in January and was set to go into the jury last week, another 2 trials with 6 defendants are underway just upstairs. 2 more trials with 1 defendant apiece are still pending. Of those who may yet be convicted, 9 now face the death penalty. Another 9 of the original 21 defendants have turned state's evidence, including Vincent Chente Arroyo, the gang's reputed general, and Ronald Shelton. Arroyo and Shelton avoided the death penalty by pleading guilty to murders and agreeing to testify against their former soldiers. Arroyo was serving 20 to life, and Shelton got 25 to life for each of the 4 murders he's confessed to. At first, when gang members would come to our side, we'd throw a party, said Kitty. But now they come to us and we think, well, how much use are you going to be to us? We've turned down a lot of potential informants. The defendant's unseemly scramble to turncoat not only made the cases easier to prosecute, it began what law enforcement hopes may be an unraveling of the gang itself. The gangsters who remain are becoming very paranoid, says Charles Kitty. They profess such loyalty to the gang, such life and death devotion, they never thought their leaders would turn them in. Attorney Provini, who represents Bobby Lopez, balks at the unfairness of cutting deals with the gang leaders, then using their testimony and seeking the death penalty against the others. Turncoat and quadruple murderer Lucky Shelton, for instance, has been referred to even by the prosecution as a homicidal maniac. I guess a homicidal maniac could be telling the truth, said Provini, but in terms of being responsible for causing these deaths, he's probably the central figure. My guy has never been shown to be the trigger man, just a loudmouth who hasn't done much except write a lot of letters and blow off lots of steam. Letters between the defendants, dozens of them, are a cornerstone of the prosecution's case. Thanks to frequent stretches in custody and occasional 10,000-word essays assigned by gang leaders, The art of the handwritten letter flourishes in Nuestra Familia. Penned in a Spanish, English, and carefully worded missive, the letters reflect the cat and mouse game between inmates and the landlord, who photocopies incoming and outgoing mail. Pay attention. In the letters, the writers often assume women's names, substituting Rhonda for Ron, for instance. Loyalty between the men is expressed by phrases such as, yes, love, and I love you too much. The pages are decorated with tiny, whimsical faces. But prosecutors say the coded messages were far from playful, serving to order hits and announce the results. 1 week after Little Weasel Herrera was killed, prosecutors say Lopez penned a coded letter to the leadership at Pelican Bay State Prison, in which every fourth word after punctuation relayed the message. The message, according to this code, was Little Weasel is peddling daisies. After receiving a letter warning him that Sheila Apodaca was involving you in the recent homicide on 2 well-known vatos and needed to be put in check, Lopez replied, excuse me. In response to your most welcome and vital message, I was already aware of the situation, but didn't figure on the cancer spreading out so wide. However, gracias again, and just maybe in the near future, we can show you our appreciation in some form or fashion. A Northern Structure member who has admitted to setting up Sheila Apodaca and shooting down Chocolate Perez, Salazar was a passenger in Lopez's car during the high-speed chase in Fresno. In an interview between sessions in the witness box, Salazar said he turned state's evidence to avoid the death penalty, turned his life around, and ended 4 years of solitary confinement. He admits that in the details of his former life, and the tattoos covering his arms, chest, neck, and face probably didn't impress the jury when he testified against his former friends in Murphy's courtroom. He got the tattoos because I wanted the notoriety, he said, and I wanted them to notice the wheelchair less and notice me more. On an average day on the street, I'd get up at 10 or 11 and go party, Salazar said. We'd go see what we could find as far as drug connections to rob. We'd look for people to kill. This is the summer of 1991, and that had came up a few times. Unlike most of his gang associates, Salazar had skills to make a living in the Silicon Valley. He worked for high-tech firms and a medical equipment company until his wife got pregnant by a fellow gang member. And then his life nosedive into depression, drugs, and violence. Having sex with another gang member's woman is strictly forbidden in the bonds, the 14 bonds. So is drug use, but everybody did it, Salazar shrugged, especially drugs. With a plea bargain sentence of 25 to life, Salazar expects to die in prison. Paraplegics have a shorter than average lifespan, and a gang snitch paraplegic in state prison faces even greater risks, but he was determined to remove himself from the gang. At one point, I really did believe in the Northern Structure in Nuestra Familia, Salazar said. We were outnumbered and we needed unity. But we didn't go out and kill enemies. We went out and killed ourselves. I realized that at some point after Sheila got killed, Salazar said. Bobby said he did love her, but as it says in the bonds, you got to put the NF first. And so he called in the hit. And after they call in a hit, you got to do it. Yet even ex-gangsters like Salazar have trouble explaining their devotion to Nuestra Familia. There is a philosophical component to the Nuestra Familia. It's something like in the mafia meets the Branch Davidians, said Deputy District Attorney Cameron Bowman, whose double murder trial of 4 NF defendants began this month. They like to talk about the struggle or the cause, but who are they killing? It's other Latinos. Nuestra Familia is one of a constellation of race-based prison gangs that organize and direct the growing subculture of California's inmates. As the prison population has exploded in the past decade, so has the influence of the gangs. The Mexican Mafia, referred to as La M, the Spanish pronunciation for the letter M, is undisputedly at the top of the gang roster with the most members, affiliates, and turf in California. Nuestra Familia, which claims San Jose as one of its main parts of its home turf, is second in influence. State prison gang experts also include the Aryan Brotherhood, and to an extent, the Black Guerrilla family and the Texas Syndicate on the list of current prison gangs in California. The Vanguard prison gang was recently demoted to the status of a mere disruptive group by correctional officials. When compared with the enormous growth of California's prison industry, the effects of the Nuestra Familia's trials in San Jose, and a recent federal prosecution of the Mexican Mafia are hard to measure. Brian Perry, head of the Special Service Gang Unit for the State Department of Corrections, says the big prosecutions are often followed by a flurry of gang activity as the second string thugs compete for the vacant positions. But Charles Kitty points to San Jose's unusually low violent crime rate as proof that prosecutions have an effect. According to the FBI, San Jose had the lowest murder rate of any big city in the United States in 1996. San Jose wasn't such a low crime area before we began this prosecution, Kitty said. The murder rate dropped by about half. The Kiddies and some gang experts are confident that Nuestra Familia is on the ropes. Because of the Three Strikes Initiative, gang members are going to prison for life at younger and younger ages. This makes gang recruitment a harder sell. But on a more fundamental level, the NF is dying because today's gangsters are simply of poorer quality than in the past, says Kitty. In the 50s and 60s, the gang leaders had been in the military and they had discipline. They had some very good leadership and bright line rules you didn't cross. No heroin for existence because it makes you lazy. These are not the kind of guys who would have killed Sheila Apodaca. That was a good article, bro.
That's a long article, man. It kind of shed a light a little bit about the thinking process and everything. And you know, we've said this many times before, bro. The 1980s is a time era that little is known. Some big occurrences occurred around that time. You had the NF Little civil conflict war between the Bobo faction and you know, I mean, the Black Bob faction. And it was a short-lived war. Black Bob ended up, you know what I'm saying, coming out on top of that situation, restructuring the organization. They ended up creating the Nuestra Raza. And there was the big indictments that had occurred at that time that Death Row Joe was one of the main ones that ended up turning at that time. I think it was in 1982, I think. So at that time, this is what's been always taught to me in the schooling is that the NF went underground during this time era of the 80s. They created the Nuestra Raza, the structure to be out there in the main lines and to be that farm team out there to take care of business for the familia at the time. And a lot of them were getting slammed down. They were getting moved to like from Folsom and Tracy and all these places they were before, and Quinton, all the way up to Tehachapi, Corcoran Shoe, and all these other locations. And so when they got to these locations, it's when they started to plot and prepare, and they wanted to start to take over the streets again. And I think I've mentioned this before. I think one of the most active regions in the 80s probably was Stockton at that time. A little bit of San Jose, a little bit of Salinas, right? But you had this sway of time period around the 90s when Dump Truck came out with directives from Pinky and Pantera to start taking care of business. So the directives that were coming out from the NF top generals at that time is we need to show the people out in the streets that we're back in business. We need to go handle our stuff. And so when they were out there, they were trying to set and lead by examples. You know what I mean?
I agree, bro. Times were tough back then, man. It was like I always stress, man, the communications were way different back then. It was harder to get things around. And it didn't seem like the centralized goals of the group were being met. You know, there was a lot of little agendas here and a lot of little agendas there. And that just breeds discontent. You know what I mean? It harbors, you got to be moving in one direction. If somebody goes off this way, everybody's looking at them like, which way you going? You know what I mean? I don't know, bro. This was before my time. This was like right before I started going to prison and stuff, man. But this was always a key. This whole case was always looked at as a key as to how not to act on the streets. You know, no disrespect to nobody involved, but there was a lot of lessons that I was taught and the people who got pulled at the same time as I did from Tibbs and Corny and them about this case. You know, about weak links, about exposing too much, about doing too much, you know, and especially the level of violence. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a violent organization. If violence is needed, there's no problem providing it. But it was the frequency and the reasoning behind it, which was used as a lot of lessons that we had to write essays about. A lot of things from this trial were subjects of 1,000, 2,500 word essays. What do you think about this? What would you do different? Why was this not the best decision? Why was this a good decision? We broke down a lot of stuff because of this whole little thing of chain of events, man.
Bro, I've read the actual case And Cripple Jerry says that the Regiment Bank only had $2,000, and it was
Yeah.
because they were out there partying, drinking, and doing drugs. You know what I'm saying? So you guys know these guys were on some cowboy stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
look, there was like 10, 11 hot ones that they know of that were contributed to the NF. There was a couple other ones that the NF did. You know what I mean? Paul Farfan, no one talks about that one. A couple other hits that happened at that time. There's a lot more things that were attributed to the NF organization during that time era. Not just these 7 or 10 murder convictions that they got. There was a whole list of other crimes that were occurring at that time. It was wild times out in the streets. And because of this case, as a kid, talking to OGs, you know what I mean, that were getting out of prison, dudes that were telling us about the structure and all that, right? They would tell us not to even say the NF name.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That these guys were on a whole nother level, that these were like the Mexican mafia. This is how I was taught as a kid, that they were like the Mexican mafia of the North. That's what we were taught. You know what I'm saying? They're a whole separate faction. They're a criminal organization. They're a mafia. They're a mob for like up north. Yep. And that their business is about killing and about extorting and about running everything in the streets of Northern California. That's how we were raised as youngsters, man. And I think this case, right, there's always been a couple small cases here and there, right? But this was the first major case besides the Death Row Joe and Bobo case that occurred. The first RICO indictment that was a state indictment that ever occurred was when Death Row Joe, Bobo, and all them got indicted. Right. So this was the next case before Operation Black Widow. I mean, you had this case, you had Mad Dog, who was indicted under a racketeering enterprise law, right? Not really a RICO, and that was just him and his brother. And then there was some Nuestra Raza members that got indicted years later. But this was the first major case where look who you had indicted in this case. You had Chente Oro. Pinky was actually indicted in this case. Skip, Leo Cano, Silencio, Wevel, Lucky Shelton, Cripple Jerry, Eddie Vargas, Flaco, all kinds of other individuals, you know what I mean, that like you don't even hear about today. But at that time, they were either strong NF associates or NF members.
Yeah, there's still a couple left, man. Like Skip, man, he survived a lot of shit, bro, and he's still right there at a high level, man. A lot of them guys are still around and still doing their thing, man. The survived 2 or 3 indictments in good standing.
He got locked up ahead of time, though.
But it happens.
Skip got locked up, I think, a week before, because when you read the transcripts, it talks about him making a call, talking about that he believed that Weasel told on him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That he was already supposed to do a hit. You know what I mean? And also the thing, man, about this story, man, Cripple Jerry, he's actually out nowadays, living his life.
Really?
Yeah, he got out, man. You know? Wow. I mean, Lucky Shelton, he's doing his thing over there in I think Mill Creek, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. He's a Christian now, so they've kind of transformed their lives. But Cripple Jerry got out, man. And the thing is, what I found interesting in this article, what people don't realize, before Mill Creek became a high power like location for like high power dropouts, you know what I mean? You're not going to find no Northern Riders. You're not going to find no 2-5ers on the Mill Creek Guard. A lot of them are high profile dropouts. Before that,
they didn't have
SNY yards. They had the PHU in Corcoran, the Protective Housing Unit, with like Sirhan, Charles Manson, Ronnie Shelton, Cripple Jerry. All those dudes were there. And it's funny, right, is that they used to show educational videos while you were in Corcoran SHU. And it'd be videos of these guys telling people how to live their life and change their ways, bro. I shit you not. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So when that shit came on, man, we had to turn it off, bro. You know? But yeah, this case was definitely about that action. I mean, I remember as a kid, bro, I remember going to court and hearing about it. I remember the trustees would come up and say, hey, the Carnales need some new books downstairs. You know what I mean? You know, they're looking at death row. Can you guys hook us up, man? It's for the Carnales. You know what I mean? All right, here. You know what I mean? What's a Carnale? You know what I mean? What's a Carnal? What is that? You know what I mean? I didn't know. You know what I'm saying? But I mean, that's how discreet things were. You know what I mean? At that time. You know?
Yeah, I remember going to West Block my first time, bro, and my cellie was giving me a rundown. His name was Richard. We'll just leave it at that. He was giving me a rundown about the do's and the don'ts, you know, because like I come from Contra Costa, bro. It was raggedy. I didn't know shit. So I get there and he starts talking about, yeah, and then there's the bros and then there's the C's. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what's a bro and a C? He's like, oh, he looked all around like people could hear. You know what I mean? We're just in the cell, and he's like, man, we'll talk about that after, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, oh, this is some serious shit. You know what I mean? He's like, he leaned close to me. You know how loud it is in Quentin, bro. It's a concert.
He's
Your
trying to
neighbor's not
whisper
hearing what
fucking.
you're talking about. But he leans like this close to me, and he's like, hey, a C is the NF, bro, and they're like the boss of all of us. You know, there's not a lot of them, but they'll kill everybody. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well, where are they at? He's like, most of them are in Pelican Bay, and then there's another one down south. And I'm sure he meant Corcoran, but that's what he said. And I was like, oh well, shit. And I started thinking, man, I want people to whisper about me. You know, I'm only like 18 years old, bro. Like, and I'm like 18 in like 4 weeks, bro. They sentenced me as an adult. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, that was my first like real hearing about it, and just his reaction, because he was an older gentleman, you know, younger than me now. He was probably 35 or something. So he was like a super OG to me. And for him to get all nervous, you know what I'm saying, and start whispering, I'm like, oh, those must be some gangsters. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, most without a doubt, bro.
But yeah, their reputation preceded them for sure, bro. And it's because of cases like this, man. They're just out there whack on, whack, just whacking shit, bro. You know what I'm saying?
They were smacking shit back, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like you said, a lot of it's cowboy shit, man, just doing crazy shit out there. But you know, however you're doing things, man, and the publicity out there, man, whether you're doing good or bad, whenever your name keeps getting mentioned on the streets, other people are going to be interested. And I'm talking about law enforcement, whether it's from killing, whether it's just from fear, whether it's from we get our dope from these guys, man, and man, before you know it, it's over.
But you know, I wonder how much like pressure they were to take care of business, man. I mean, they went out there and took care of business, bro. Allegedly, they were given strong directives that the killings have not been occurring like they should be. And
They
it's time to
changed
go out
that
there.
around, didn't they?
It's time to go out there and set an example, man. I mean,
The example was set.
besides the 70s, you know, Fresno and Salinas and Bakersfield, you know what I mean? There was some times where like this is like probably one of the most violent times in one location. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Of the people they were having hit. I mean, imagine you being a bro at the time or a young C. You know what I mean? And you're out there and you don't know fucking if you're next.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of calls, bro. There was no due process back then, bro. There was no like real hardcore investigations. It was more of a favoritism, bro.
Hey, when I first,
I know a little bit because I know one of the persons that was there on the 4th floor was Silent, man. And I'm gonna say this: he passed away. Robert Rabbit Rios was telling me the story, man. He told me straight up that Silent had a hard time making that decision when it came to the situation with his girlfriend. That
Yeah,
it was kind of being pressed by other people. You know what I'm saying? There's other stuff, there's other things that he told me in regards to that, but out of respect, I'm not even going to talk about it.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? But not saying that Silent made that decision, but when it happened, Silent had a hard time over that issue. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like something like he took, like he was like they haven't been a stone cold killer and all this. That's not what I heard. And I don't think he was the one that really pushed that issue to have that done. I think he suffered the consequences behind it.
you would
You know what I'm
think,
saying?
bro, that anybody with half a sense of, you know, empathy or decency that's not just like a straight psychopath would have a tough time with a decision like that, bro. You know
Oh,
what
I mean, the way they were whacking dudes, you want to be on board whacking someone because you never know if you're going to be next.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, if you turn down something out of, you know, fear of getting caught or whatever, it might make you look soft. You might end up on the next piece of paper.
I mean, I think about 3 or 4 of those dudes actually told because they thought they were next.
When I first read this case, bro, I thought, man, if they caught all these murders, just think about the ones they got away with. But it turns out in the end, with the amount of people telling, they got all of them. You know,
Bro,
they
but
brought
I
up
mean,
other shit.
but they were now. There's a couple ones that people like I mentioned one that no one's been able to sit there and I mean, Paul Farfan. Anybody knows him? That was a bad hit too. That should have never happened. You know what I mean? A couple other ones that occurred out there. You know what I mean? I thought Chocolate was done in by a female, if I was not mistaken, bro. That lured him to a spot, if I'm not mistaken, to a park or school. And that's how they ended up getting his ass. There was a whole lot of different situations going on. Like a lot of these dudes, man, like, you know, Roy Reveles and Themo. I mean, these are all dudes that I heard their names as a kid, man. But You know, that's just how the game goes sometimes.
It don't even seem like they were out there trying to get no money. They were just out there. They were just out there like it was.
Hey, give me an ounce of KJ. They tell them no, boom, over an ounce. You know what I mean? You know,
Man, that's
the
crazy.
bank. Wait. The bank had $2,000, but they were drinking and using drugs. You know what I mean? What was the other part of the case where the dude had guns, but he decided to sell them because he wanted alcohol? I was like, wow.
Hey, there was one. Wasn't there one where he traded like 2 guns for like a gram of KJ or something like that?
Something like that, bro.
Nuts, bro. But you know, who knows,
I
man?
like to hit one fucking. It says that it says Shrek. It says Huevos fucking gun fucking jammed. And Silencio had to tackle him and shit, and then fucking.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
remember
Imagine in broad
reading the
daylight, you're trying to.
details.
I don't know how. You know what I mean? Imagine in broad daylight, you're trying to hit someone. The gun. I don't even think the gun could jam that he was using, bro. To be honest with you.
It's a 38 nothing, was it? Hey, what's the name of the total case for our viewers, man, that want to check out the whole thing?
Check out Eddie Vargas versus California. Just type in Eddie Vargas, Nuestra Familia. It's an appeal case that came out, I think, in 2001 when he went out on appeal on it.
Yeah, usually we don't bother putting it up because they're hella long, but this one's so interesting. I'm sure there's a couple of you out there that might want to read it because it'll blow your mind.
It'll go into details.
This is just a brief summary.
It'll go into details about every hit, about all kinds of stuff, man. And you know what I mean? When you talked before, man, about coming out from the shoot, man, and them trying to instruct you to do certain things like armored truck robberies and stuff like that, you're like, man, you can't do that nowadays.
No.
This is the kind of shit these guys were trying to do.
Yeah, hey, people get stuck back there in them shoes, man. And that's what I've stressed to a lot of people before is when you do a considerable amount of time, which I have not done. Let's not get it twisted. I haven't done no 10s, no 15s, nothing like that, man. I've been lucky. But when you do that kind of time, you kind of get froze socially and emotionally to like the day you went in until you get out, because life kind of stops for you. Like as far as adjusting to civilization and new technologies and new fads, new trends, new whatever the case might be. So when you get out, it's really like the same day you went in. You're right there in that frame of mind. And time has done passed you by when you've done 10, 12, 15 years. Things have changed. And that was one of the problems. You know, not that I'm no expert, no kind of nothing, but that's obviously one of the problems a lot of these groups have with adjusting once they're back in society, because they're still trying to do things that were cool back in 72, that just things like simple technology and, you know, advancement in criminal forensics and stuff cannot allow you to do anymore. Anyway, I found that article, man. Me and Flacco agreed. It was very interesting for you guys, man. Hopefully you enjoyed it. The name of the case Flacco gave you guys if you want to check it out. And as always, one of us will be live later. And we appreciate all you guys who helped out with Farmetto. That was really righteous of you guys, man. We appreciate that, man. We're still
trying to do more for them too, guys.
Possible on here all the time who need it, who we know need it, you know. So anyway, have a good what is this, Tuesday, right? Have a good Tuesday.
It's Tuesday, last day of the month, man. Support the channel, guys. Help us put this push. Start the new month all right.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're out of here.